Why do you want them to listen to your podcast?
So that when they think about starting a business, they've got the content that is pointing them in the right direction.
That is such a valuable piece of advice there.
The change in mindset makes a massive difference. I'm Gary Ashton, and I'm here to help business owners succeed and enjoy being in business. Does running your business feel chaotic? Maybe you started it for freedom, to live the life you wanted, but now you're stuck in the grind, overwhelmed and exhausted. The stress doesn't stop. You work harder, but nothing really changes. Get real support at Think Tank Coaching. Get crystal clear on future goals, your ideal customers, and the numbers to focus on that will move your business forward. If you're ready to make a change, let's talk. Book your free strategy session now at thinktankcoaching.com.au. This week, we're joining SortScape founders Bill and Chris as we discuss the reasons you should use SortScape to manage your scheduling and invoicing. You can join now at sortscape.com/LawnStars. Welcome to Aussie Lawn Stars. I've got two guests with me today. Now, Bill and Chris. I don't know either of your last names, so why don't we start with that? Bill, what's your last name?
My last name is Arcanati. It's Italian.
I'm not going to remember that.
That's all right.
And Chris?
My last name is Kier, which is, I'm from
Again.
Germany originally, so it's a German surname.
Okay, so Bill, you don't sound Italian, and Chris, you don't sound German.
That's right. I'm originally American. I'm Australian as well, but I grew up in the States, in the Midwest, but moved out here in 2010. So I've been here for about 15 years now.
15 years, okay. I was just asking Chris while we were waiting for your computer to join in, and he's been here since 2008. So you guys are not too far apart being Australian.
Yeah.
And I'm not actually Australian myself.
Oh.
Kiwi.
Shh, don't tell anyone. I've never lived there. Never.
Yeah, right.
I've been in Australia since I turned 5 in Australia. Yeah, so less than 5 I came to Australia. And I didn't come from New Zealand, but my dad's got a New Zealand citizenship. And so when I was born in the Pacific Islands in the place called Tonga, they gave me New Zealand citizenship. And it took a little bit of digging to actually prove it too.
Oh, wow.
New Zealand didn't really want to take ownership of me because I wasn't born there.
A man without a home.
Well, I've got a Tongan birth certificate, and when I started dating my wife, so this is date me, this second marriage, and we started dating around 2007. And she was telling her work colleagues and her clients that she was dating a Tongan. I was like, that's just a little bit misleading. So, what brings both of you to Australia?
I actually moved out for work. So Chris and I actually met working at a company called Atlassian, which is a Australian-based software company.
Yep.
And so I was working for them in San Francisco, and what was meant to be a 2-year kind of tour of duty to the Sydney office turned out to be 15 years and counting.
Okay, so I think most people will have heard of Atlassian. Not a lot of people will know what they actually do. We don't need to take a deep dive into that at the moment, but you both were working there initially.
Yeah, that's right.
And
Chris, did you move out here for Atlassian?
No, we're actually backpacking at the time. Hard to believe, but I've been doing software development back in Germany already, and my wife and I, we moved over here together around, I think she was I turned 30 actually the year we moved here, I think. And just to try something new, and we ended up backpacking a little bit, ran out of money, needed a job, and found my Atlassian. I think I worked there for 9 years.
Wow. So you've dated yourself there, Chris. You're probably a couple of years older than me by the sounds of it.
Yeah, don't ask me. What's the math? So it'll be like 46 or something, I think.
Okay, I've got it wrong then. You're younger than me.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
I'll be 48. I'll be 48 by the end of this week.
Oh, then,
Oh,
nice
happy
one.
birthday.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. But you mentioned your German background, and I make it a point to always talk about motorbikes. So I have a German motorbike.
Ah, what you got? BMW?
Yes, for sure. I don't know of too many other
Oh,
brands that are German, but yeah,
I think that's probably the main one. Honestly, I'm not big into motorbikes, but obviously always fascinated. I remember actually a friend of ours, like he visited us here in Australia, and he came down on a BMW and was telling me about how it's a bit unique because they don't use chain drive, but they actually use a drive shaft on those machines, which I found interesting.
yeah. So mine's old school. It's still chain drive, but it's the sportier version of the BMW, and a lot of fun.
Oh,
We
that
we will lose a lot of listeners if we talk about motorbikes too long, but I always make sure I touch on it just in case the guests want to talk about it too.
What about
I've
you,
got an
Gary?
e-bike. Does that count?
Oh, e-bikes. I've looked into that, but I've never bought one. And we could touch on all the things people say about people who own e-bikes, but we won't.
No. They are becoming mini motorbikes, though. You know, you got a
Yeah.
1,000 watt motor on some of them.
Oh, yeah. Yes. I think there's some pretty good restrictions on what you can and can't do with an e-bike in Australia because of the amount of power you can generate.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you ride on the road or is it a mountain bike?
On road.
Yeah.
But I stay within the laws, of course.
Of course. Of
Yeah.
course. We've seen people make it into the news for not staying inside the law.
Yeah, if you go here in Sydney in the northern beaches and probably in your area too, Gary, like every teenager seems to have one of these fat tire e-bikes.
Yeah. Definitely. And the amount of e-scooters that are getting around at the moment too. I've seen some of them that are clocking ridiculous speeds.
Yeah.
But all good fun until somebody gets hurt.
Yeah. Wear your
Indeed.
helmets, kids.
That's right. And don't play with the speed control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's not what we're here for. So you guys are into software, which seems like a strange fit for a podcast that's talking about lawn care businesses.
Software is everywhere now.
Well, yeah. And when I started my business, I started in 2010. I had some fanciful ideas about what I could do in lawn care. And so I named my business Lawns Online and had all sorts of crazy ideas about how I could implement things from the internet or available online to make it easier for people to interact with the business. And
Yeah, wow.
yeah, silly thoughts, some of them, but still run around in the back of my head. And back then, there was no such thing as scheduling software or CRMs or anything along those lines. So when I started, I was technologically advanced, having a little bit of an IT background. I used a spreadsheet and I fairly quickly went to Apple Calendar. So between the spreadsheet and Apple Calendar, I would manage all of my accounting and scheduling.
Yeah, which, as you
Great.
said, I think was probably pretty advanced at that time.
Well, I first talked to a gyms franchise before I started, and then I went independent. Never mind that issue. But the gyms franchise, he was doing everything by paper. So he had his paper diary there. And then if a customer wanted to be invoiced, that's what he would report to the tax office. But I didn't say that.
Right.
It was an interesting discussion with him, and I went a different direction to him. But yeah, it was, I think, looking back then, I was looking at ways of trying to make sure that my business was efficient, and using a spreadsheet allowed me to analyze how often I was mowing a customer, how much I was charging per cut per year, all those various different things. So
Yeah.
I fancied myself as knowing my way around a spreadsheet and thought, this is awesome. I can do all sorts of things with this.
Yeah.
Then I took it to my accountant, and after a few years, I thought, I need to become a little bit more advanced to become more efficient in this line, because I very quickly proved when I was relying on a spreadsheet, the invoicing would only get done at the end of the week or sometimes at the end of the month, and that presents all sorts of issues.
Cash flow issues?
Well, definitely cash flow issues, but also issues with the old brain remembering what I've done.
Right.
Even if it's on the spreadsheet, doesn't mean it exists, right? So
Right.
the problems in my business when I started were significant because of that. And as I worked through those issues, I made changes to try and minimize those problems. But when I started podcasting, I was looking at other people and what they do, and this has helped me a lot, because instead of having n equals 1, I've got n equals somewhere close to 200 people I've spoken to personally now. And that gives me a lot more insight into what people do, which ways are most efficient to run their business, what's actually worthwhile versus what works for one person but doesn't necessarily work for the next.
Absolutely. We find that in the customers that we work with as well, because you kind of think, okay, you're going to build software for lawn and garden maintenance, but even within that very narrow niche of an industry, people just manage their schedules and their employees and run their businesses in so many different ways. So
Yeah,
that's both a challenge, I guess, and sort of an opportunity for us to learn more about how people run their businesses.
yeah, for sure. And at the heart of this, my desire is to help people be more efficient in their business and to be able to make sure they know what they know about their business rather than running blind. So my podcast's been going for a bit over 3 years, and that's my outreach to people, my mission, if you like, of helping people actually achieve something with their business that they can have the knowledge, be armed with the knowledge so that they know where they're going and they actually can aim for some goals that are tangible. But yeah, I have never run a CRM or a scheduling software package at all. And I'm in a position where I don't see a lot of benefit, although I still consider it from time to time. But I've talked to other people who do run software packages like SortScape, which is where we're heading with what both of you have been invested in. I've looked at ServiceMate, I've looked at Jobber, and I've looked at a few other packages. And each of them offered slightly different variations of what they do. So I guess part of what I want to look at the moment is what makes a CRM, or if we take that word out of it and just call it scheduling or scheduling and invoicing. There's so many different ways we could describe software like this. What is it that makes somebody want to use software rather than the old paper diary or the spreadsheet like I had? Is there can you put it into something fairly succinct that helps people understand why they would choose that?
We can try.
Yeah.
I think it's actually different things, right? Like, but people notice some inefficiencies in their business, right? So for some people, it might be the scheduling that they just like find they can't juggle all the jobs, right? Or like there's always jobs left at the end of the week, or sometimes they accidentally drop jobs, right? So,
Yep.
and that's where they look, surely there must be something better, and just try to find an app that helps them with that. But then there's also other things, for example, random issues that get raised, right? Say the customer texts you and says, oh, next time you come, can you please trim that bush in the back corner? Or can you like whip behind the shed or something like that?
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And then you think, oh, I'm going to write it down as soon as I get out of the truck. And then you forget about it, right?
I've done that before.
Yeah. So, and that's where a system like SortScape comes into play, where you can just add that note straight to the property, and then next time you pull up, it's all right there. And that kind of stuff is so important when you're dealing with customers, right? Just painting that image of a reliable lawn care guy or garden maintenance guy, like that's super important.
So what you've just described there, I initially would have gone, well, that is purely scheduling. That is about just managing your schedule. But in the background, I'm going, hang on a minute. That also covers invoicing, because you can check that box when you finish the job. You go, okay, we've added that extra service where we're pruning the tree, invoice the customer. Oh, we're not just invoicing them for the lawn because we've got this extra service in which we've quoted them. There's the price. Go for it.
That's right.
Or it automates it partly, but it also allows you to make sure you're not relying on your own memory to miss things and not actually invoice them for something you've done.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think you lose a lot of money when things slip through the cracks and you forget to invoice them for an entire job or part of a job.
Yeah. Yep.
There's also the communication aspect of it as well. I think a lot of people we find sign up for SortScape because they want the automated communication to their customers. So I need to send a text message or an email a couple nights before I'm going to visit them to let them know I'm going to be there. Seems like a level of communication that customers are expecting nowadays.
Yeah, without that, I know that I have relied on my memory to think about which customers want notification, which ones need a text message, which ones need a phone call, various different options. If you turn up unannounced, you never know what you're going to bump into in the backyard, whether it be the pets, the dog poo, or the customer running around in their underwear. And all these things happen. You hear the stories. So it's an important aspect of it, isn't it, to make sure the customer knows and has the warning. This is when I'm planning on being there. I guess the other aspect of that is, do you make it super refined? I'm going to be there at 9:05 a.m. on Tuesday, or do you make it, I'm going to be there Tuesday morning, roughly?
Yeah. Yeah, at this stage, I mean, it's interesting when you touch on, because you also talked about how, like, all the different apps out there, they have slightly different features.
Yeah.
I think one thing that set us apart a bit is that we didn't actually start with specific times. Like, a lot of the software out there is based on a calendar. We have to have a start and end date, right? A start and end time for every visit.
Yes.
Which is okay if you're doing 2 visits a day, but if you're doing 10 or 20 visits a day, as soon as you start trying to reshuffle your schedule, it becomes quite tedious to adjust all those times.
Yep.
Where it actually turns out, for the majority of the businesses doing garden maintenance, it doesn't really matter what time they show up. Sometimes it doesn't even matter which day they show up, as long as they show up in that week.
Yeah.
And we try to, embrace that flexibility by not doing times, but just like easily allowing to drag jobs around.
Yep.
The downside of that is that at the moment we wouldn't be able to tell what time you're going to come to visit the property. But that is something that we're looking at changing, because we already have the route optimization in SortScape, which can optimize the routes. And with that, we can also calculate the travel time. So because we have an estimated time for each visit and the travel time, we can then approximate like what your arrival time is going to be.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's certainly something that we're going to look at adding in.
Yeah, and I've looked at a number of features that are varying between the different apps that you can use. And I think that's one of the things that really stands out to me is some of the apps are designed for trades, blank.
Yeah.
Some of them are designed to work well in the US or in Europe or varying different countries. I think ServiceMate and SortScape are the two that I know of that are designed very specifically for Australia.
Yeah, I think those are the two big ones in Australia.
Yeah. So Jobber is the other one that I've come across. It was the first one I knew of that was coming to Australia, but it's based in Canada. And so when it came to Australia, there were a number of features that either weren't functional, didn't work properly in Australia, or they were a little bit clunky at the very least.
I think too, I mean, you will find that I feel like most of those scheduling apps out there, as you said, they come more from the trade side where we're talking plumbers, electricians, air conditioning guys, those kind of things.
Yeah.
I mean, they obviously work for landscape in that as well, but it's just not where they started. And sometimes you can feel it where you kind of almost work against it. Whereas we started with landscaping, garden maintenance, and that's what's different.
Well, some of the features I've noticed that make a big difference, if they are aimed at the trades, they are often aimed at covering, let's call it a full CRM. And I don't like using the word CRM interchangeably for different things, but a full CRM is supposedly, according to people who are very pedantic about what it actually means, covers everything from lead generation through to invoicing and closure of all the jobs. So the full spectrum from the start to finish. Whereas often they don't cover all of those features, or like we were just talking about, some of them are very targeted at lead generation because a lot of trades need a lot more invested in lead generation when they are taking all new jobs, whereas maintenance industries like the lawn care industry or cleaning, they tend to have a lot of repeat work. So, you're scheduled in for once a week, once a fortnight, once a month, or the dreaded once every 3 weeks. I just don't understand how people can schedule a 3-week job in with everything else. It doesn't add up.
Or the third Friday of the month. You get things like that as well.
I talked about this on my podcast all the time. I had a customer years ago. I dropped them for this reason because they were working night shift and they would say, oh, no, Tuesday this week doesn't work. Can you do Wednesday at 10 a.m.? And then the next one, oh, Wednesday doesn't work. Can you do Monday at 4 p.m.? And it was an absolute nightmare to try and schedule them. And he was happy to pay for being a pain. But when I did the maths, I was like, okay, in order for him to pay enough for the amount of painfulness that he's causing, I would have to charge him like $500, $1,000 a week.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just was like, all right, go find someone else.
Yeah.
But the whole idea of scheduling maintenance work in this industry, lawn care and garden maintenance, a lot of the CRMs don't do it well.
Yeah. And there's also the seasonal aspect to it as well.
Yeah.
A lot of people will do lawns and gardens fortnightly during the growing seasons, like spring and summer, and then autumn they want to ratchet that back to every 4 weeks.
Yes.
And so you want to be able to just do all your customer updates in one fell swoop, not go and have to update each one individually.
Yep.
So that's kind of the perspective that we're coming from, is just lawn and garden, Australia, being able to bulk update your seasonal schedules, for example.
Yeah. And I speak to a lot of people that do it very rigidly, fortnightly through the growing season and once every 4 weeks through the cold season.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And that works for some people. Other people are much more informal and they go, okay, well, let's do it when it needs it. And that means if you get drought for 2 weeks or a month in the middle of summer, let's cut the service just a little bit so that we're not just mowing in the dust. And then in winter, if it's been a really warm winter, when maybe it's once every 3 weeks through winter.
Yeah, that's right. So the work is very weather dependent. So if it rains for an entire week, then you have to push all your jobs back and you have to make a decision. All right, well, am I going to try to do 2 weeks within 1 week, or am I going to push everyone back, or some combination of that? So that's the perspective that we're coming from.
Yeah, and I see people that want to be very rigid versus people that are very flexible in there, and I guess that's a challenge for any scheduling software to be able to deal with that, the difference between people who are flexible and others who are very rigid.
Yeah, and I think especially in the lawn industry, the high volume of jobs can cause an issue, right? Like, I mean, we have heaps of people, they do like 20, like up to 30 jobs, depending on like how close they are to each other and how big they are, right?
Yeah.
To juggle that many jobs, like on weather events, or also with say staff calls in sick, right? All those things, you need to be able to react quickly, and that can be a challenge with your regular calendar. Whereas a lot of those things, like we build functionality into SortScape to help you with that.
Yeah. So I've realised we've taken a bit of a dive from your history into a feature-rich discussion. Can we wind the clock back a second? So we were talking about both of you working for Atlassian, and you've both broken away from Atlassian to start a software company together. So how long ago did you start SortScape?
You want me to take that one,
I
Chris?
was going to say you start, because Bill is really the one who started it, and I only joined him a little bit later. So
Yeah, okay. Yep.
Yeah, it was kind of informal. So Chris and I worked actually very closely together at Atlassian, and I guess I was a bit burned out, looking to do something different. I had small children then, so I thought I'm going to take some time off, figure out what I want to do. I always wanted to. I'm a nerd. I enjoy building software. So I was looking, how can I use software to help small businesses? We were working with very large kind of corporate businesses at Atlassian. And I thought, oh, I'd like to work with maybe family-owned businesses, smaller, what would you call it? Yeah, smaller Main Street type businesses.
Right.
And so I just started phoning around to a couple guys in the area in the lawn and garden industry. And I said, tell me your process. How do you run your schedules? How do you do your business? And maybe there's some way I can help improve your scheduling.
Yeah.
And I found someone who was willing to work with me on that. Martin, if you're listening, hi, Martin. And he walked me through exactly how he did his scheduling, and we turned that into a software system, very basic. And then kind of tried to roll that out to a couple other customers, but it was a little bit of a side project for me, to be honest, until Chris and I started talking. We kept in touch after I left and started talking, oh, how can we do more with this? And then he joined me a couple years later, maybe it was around 2018, I think. Late 2018 is when we
I think so, yeah.
kind of formalized the business.
Okay. Yep.
And Chris, just as background, I am not a software developer by training and by any means. I was just completely self-taught. So luckily, Chris came along and he looked at my code and decided
he needs help.
It's kind of shit, but yeah, we can work with this.
Good.
Yeah. So Chris can fill you in on the rest of the history.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, similar thing as I said, I've worked at Atlassian for a long time, for 9 years, and then the company was growing a fair bit. I'm a bit of a jack of all trades. I like to do a bit of everything. I mean, I like my software development, but as I said earlier when we were talking, I really enjoy talking to customers as well.
Yeah.
And as a company grows, it develops into more specialized roles. So at some point, it wasn't really needed for me anymore to talk to customers. It was just kind of, here's that feature that I want you to build. Don't talk to anyone. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but that's what it felt like. Right? So I was looking for a change, and as Bill said, we kept in touch. And I actually had this thing. I went to my local mechanic, and I just noticed that he did have a computer, but every time he would issue an invoice to me, he only had one file on his computer. He would open that up as a Word document. He would change the number, print it out, give it to me, and then just leave it. He wouldn't even save it or store it or anything. He didn't have any records like on his computer. He was really just using it as a typewriter.
Yeah.
And
wow.
that was for me kind of this moment. I was like, wow, like I'm a software developer, the things that we build at Atlassian for those IT companies. If you only knew the things that you can do with a computer, right? It would make his life so much easier.
Yeah.
And I was actually looking into building something more for mechanics at some stage, investigate a little bit, but it was going to get hard. Like you would have to integrate with like a lot of the parts ordering and all that. And it was going to be fairly big. And at someone, like when talking to me, I was like, you know what, actually what you're doing is a similar thing, like what I was thinking, just do something for small businesses and help them to really use the potential of IT to run their business more efficiently and effectively.
Yep.
And and at that point, I was like, you know what? I think I'll just join you and we do this lawn care and garden maintenance thing.
Yeah, wow. So I think that's one of the things people would, with a entrepreneurial mind, to look at is they look at businesses they interact with and go, wow, it would be so easy to help you create a system that's going to improve your business. And from an IT background, that's there's always room for improvement there with systems that improve efficiency.
Absolutely.
I looked at things like that myself when I started my business. Coming from a little bit of an IT background, I was looking at going, okay, there must be a way to build a good system for quoting, or there must be a way to build something that's going to be better than just a spreadsheet on its own for taking care of all my scheduling.
Definitely.
And that was around the same time you guys were working at Atlassian.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a whole lot, not just writing the code, but also kind of packaging it up and delivering it to customers, and the documentation and training that goes with it, and the support as well. So there's a whole lot to consider.
Certainly is. So, it's not just sitting behind a screen writing code, like you say.
Exactly. No. And in fact, like that's, I think Chris was hinting at this earlier, is what's I find rewarding about this job is that the customers that we're interacting with, they say, can you add this feature or fix this bug or, make it work like this? And, if we think it makes sense, we can make that change ourselves right away. It doesn't have to go through an approval process or, any type of committee or bureaucracy. We can just solve that customer's problem right then and there, which, as a software developer or an IT guy, that's doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah. Now, over the last 6-7 years, I've seen SortScape come up on Facebook user groups. Generally speaking, was in the early days, it was, SortScape's a good option for people who are looking for something that's fairly simple and easy to install. And recently I interviewed Kyla McDonald and then Renee Smith back to back. So if you jump back in my archives, it's only a couple of weeks ago we did those interviews. Both of those ladies using SortScape, and that seems to be one of the things that stands out is they call them loyal to the brand SortScape because of the interactions they have directly with you. And that allows a fairly transparent and quick interaction with issues or with features, and seems to make a difference for users on the ground when they're going, okay, this feature doesn't work properly, or I need it to do X, or we don't have a feature that does something. But so you said around 2018 when you first floated the idea, or is that when it first started to get used?
I think that's when it started picking up. I joined you around 2018. I think that's where like it started picking up, and you were like, okay,
that's right.
This is a valid. I want to turn this into a proper business. This is going somewhere.
Awesome. Okay, so in the early days, 2018, over the first couple of years where it was being used regularly, then it was certainly building its name as being Australian and being simple. So very basic and simple. And basic and simple can be good or bad depending on how you look at them, right? But for the user group, those were things which were a badge of honor and a reason to be loyal to SortScape.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we've always, right from the start, we said we wanted something simple, and we know it from IT too. It's so easy to build a complex system when you build IT
Yeah.
software. And we know, I mean, you said like a lot of the long guys are kind of technicians, but
Yeah.
we find a lot of them are not very much into computers. That's
Yeah.
just kind of want it to work. And they don't want to spend days on like setting things up and then figuring out how to do stuff.
Yeah.
So even today, we've obviously added a lot of features. I mean, we've got the invoicing now, we've got the quoting, we're about to launch the lead capture as well. So we're trying to
Yeah.
really
Okay.
help with all of those things, but it's always like forefront for us to keep things simple and easy to set up. So you don't have to like hire like your $1,000, $2,000 consultant who sets up the system for you, so you can just get into it and do it yourself.
Yeah. Okay. So,
Yeah.
so for a new user who's created a login with SortScape, paying their monthly fees, it's fairly easy for them to do the initial setup themselves.
Yeah, 100%. And
Yeah.
also, I mean, you already touched on it. You interviewed Carla a few weeks back. She's joined us. Yeah, I'm just thinking this year, end of last year, I think, right?
Yep.
Towards the end of last year, and she's been amazing. She's been helping us create videos, which been really helpful in
Yep.
showing people how certain features work.
Yeah.
And how to get started. But also, with her, we started offering free online training sessions, which have had a great take up as well. And what we find is it's usually an hour session that she does with the people, and after that, they have set up and ready to go. We get the odd question afterwards, but that's pretty much all it takes.
Okay. So that was a question that I had in the back of my head was if people go to Kyla and ask her for an hour session, are they paying for it or not? So you're saying that's a free session?
Yeah. At the moment, like we're offering it as a free session. I mean, you get one session. Every now and then we do a follow-up session if required, but usually you only need that first session. So, and for the time being, be free. I don't know, maybe down the track we might offer like more advanced training or something at a cost. But
Yeah.
as I said, usually it's not required because SortScape is still fairly simple, even with all the features that we've added.
Efficiency is the thing that rules a business and the decisions you make as a small business owner. Right Mowers give you the options in their product lineup to match efficiency with size, fuel usage, and the type of jobs you want to target, from catching to mulching or side discharge, from roadside verges to acreages, and manicured lawns to 6 feet tall and super long. I've been using the Right Stander I 42-inch with a Catch Pro for manicured areas and the Stander ZK61 to maximise productivity for large open acreage mowing. If you need to replace your push mower, try the 32-inch Stander B. If you have more open access to residential properties, there's a 42 through 48-inch option that suits you. And if you want to enter the acreage market, the 52, 61 and 72-inch machines have choices in engine size and model type to suit the work you want it to do. Right Standards go the distance, saving you time and money, season after season. So if we run through a couple of things, and like I said, I don't use a CRM at the moment, but if I was to join up with SortScape, the first thing I'm going to do is go, okay, I need to set up two things. I need to set up my company information so that it's got my logo, letterhead, etc. And then I need to set up my customers' information so that it's got those basics in that database.
Yeah.
Some things, like I use Xero for doing my invoicing at the moment and all my accounting. So that does everything. But my accountant set up all of that background information for me. And then I can add customers in there, or I can go in and change my logo on my letterhead. But it wasn't an easy thing for an end user to go into Xero and just set up all of that information. And I think that's what I've seen with some of the CRMs is getting those initial things right is really important.
Yeah, I think Xero especially, I feel like it's more built for accountants, right? If you're not an accountant, if you're just a business owner and you don't know much about accounting, you'll struggle to set it up for sure.
Yeah. So if I came to you and said, hey, I want to set up an account with SortScape, or I don't even talk to you, right? I just go onto their website or
To the chat.
open the app, create a new account.
Yeah.
All those things are fairly easy and yes, I have an IT background, but somebody who doesn't have an IT background, they go in, they could set that up fairly quickly.
Yeah, and a large percentage of our customers are using Xero already. And if that's the case, their accountants already got their customer information in Xero for them, and we just import that into SortScape. So
Nice.
you can start scheduling your jobs right there.
Yeah.
And if not, sometimes people might email us. They might have a spreadsheet. They've exported their customer list from another system, and it's pretty simple for us to import that for them.
Yeah. Okay. I guess that brings me to the next stage. So I've got a SortScape account, got some data in there. Now I want to schedule my first job, and they're going to be fortnightly. So I'm going, okay, Mr. Jones, I'm going to turn up at his property every fortnight. Here's the address. How long does it take me to just get that set up so that customer's scheduled regularly? And when I turn up to mow that lawn, how complicated is it to actually process that in SortScape to go, okay, I've turned up. Do I start a timer or does it start automatically? Do I invoice them or do I just, when I turn around and drive out, does it automatically do it?
Yeah, super simple. Look, like when you add the visits, like say as you said, like a fortnightly visit, only takes a few clicks to have it up in your schedule, and then the calendar is like going to populate itself automatically for just over a year's worth of visits,
Yep.
so you can see what's coming up. And and then once you at the job, we have the job timer. We don't start it automatically. It's interesting you touched on that. I know some of the apps do, but I've also seen a lot of bad feedback about it because, especially in lawn care, often have quite a few adjacent sites and can be confusing for the GPS to figure out which
that is
actually at.
That's a major complaint that I see come up is I've got 3 jobs beside each other. I turn up to mow 3 jobs at once. Which job does it record? Or does it know the difference between each 3 of those 3 properties? And then that raises a efficiency question again. I was talking to Renee about this when I interviewed her. Do you do the whippersnipping for all 3 properties and then go back and do the blowing and then go back and do the mowing? I personally think, and Renee likes me, she agreed with me on this one, you do one property completely, then the next one, and then the one after, which in theory, if you are using route density for your scheduling, you should be able to go, okay, property 7, recognise the GPS location, clocked in at 9:05, clocked out at 9:45, there we go, done, right? Now we've got, instead of property 15 on the same street, we got property 9A, which is behind 9. And the GPS can't tell the difference, can it?
No.
So
Yeah.
So generally it's pretty easy, and we have the start timer, stop timer on there. At the end of the day, it's just a click, pull out your phone, start the timer, and when you finish, a lot of the people like that, for example, they take before and after pictures anyway, so you got your phone out already. It's not a big deal to press the start timer and timer. And usually, like if you got your visits set up right, say especially in lawn care, a lot of the visits are fixed price visits, so it's the line items are already set up. So once the job's complete, you just click invoice, like you can review it, make sure everything's as it should, and then just send it off straight away.
Yep.
And pushes it into Xero or QuickBooks Online if that's the system you're using.
Okay, so can we invoice directly from SortScape, or do we invoice from the accounting package?
Well, I'll leave that to Bill. He's the invoicing expert.
Oh yeah, no, don't say that. Both actually. So It's fairly new. We used to only do it through Xero or QuickBooks Online.
Yeah.
But just within the past maybe 4 or 5 months, we added the ability to send an invoice without having either of those systems. So that's all tracked inside of SortScape.
Okay, so SortScape becomes more of a complete package where you don't need to have an online accounting package connected to it, or it's still better
Yeah,
if it is connected to one.
yeah, because it's sort of there's more downstream things, I guess, that would tend to happen if it depends how sophisticated your bookkeeping needs to be. For example, we use Zero internally and we need to track GST. So how much did we charge? How much did we pay? We don't necessarily have that built into SortScape right now. So Zero does like your expense tracking. It
Yeah.
does a lot of your taxes. It does your payroll. And that's not something we're really looking to build. We're not looking to completely replicate Zero for customers.
Yeah.
But if smaller businesses, they might not be of the size where they need to charge GST or taxes, and they're not worried about sophisticated bookkeeping, etc. SortScape invoicing could be a viable option for them.
I
And
think if your bookkeeping is handing two boxes over to your account, one with invoices and one with expense receipts, then basically very simple. Then you could easily just invoice with SortScape, and there's no need for you to have a separate accounting app.
now, most people who are doing that simply won't understand or have a comprehension of the word reconciling, but
Right.
in Zero, you're going to reconcile payments with invoices.
Yeah.
So that's probably the next stage where people go, okay, that makes sense to have a separate accounting package because that means that they're doing their double entry bookkeeping, kind of.
Right. Yeah. You connect it to your bank account and then you're syncing Zero with your bank account and reconciling all your expenses there. Yeah.
And
We're not going to try to do any of that for now.
That's fair. That is very fair.
And the majority of the people that use an accounting app like that actually have their accountant have access to it as well.
Yeah.
So an accountant, they know how to use Xero and they know how to use QuickBooks, but they're not interested in learning how to use SortScape, right? And how to do accounting in SortScape.
Correct.
Because they're going to have 200, 300 clients and maybe 5 of them are lawn care people, right?
Yeah.
So that's an important consideration as well.
For sure. So this is where keeping SortScape simple so that your client, being the actual lawn care and gardening business, is able to get their head around all of the features without needing an accountant to be across that as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I guess that's the other aspect where I think a CRM offers a lot of advantages. We talk about building efficiency in your business and being aware of how your business is tracking. And a number of CRMs will start to provide a lot of analytics around the work that you do. So how does SortScape go? Is this something you're offering a lot of features with and analysing the data, or is this something you're looking to add with SortScape in the future? I'm thinking, for example, if you have done 50 jobs for the week, can SortScape give me an analysis of how efficient that was, whether my route density was off or whether I spent longer on the jobs this time than I did on average?
Yeah. I mean, it's something that I'm really interested in because, we capture a lot of the data already, right? We do have the estimated time that you put in, like your budgeted time for the job. If you use the job timer, we know how much time it actually took you.
Yep.
With the route optimization, we can obviously track what your driving time is. Yep. So, with that data, I really want to add a feature like a reporting feature that allows you to optimize your whole schedule. And it's about how much profit do we make on the jobs as well, right? Like I know a lot of guys, they use kind of like a traffic light system where they have their green, yellow, red customers, and then the red ones get colored at the end of the season.
Exactly.
I would love to build something like that into SortScape where it makes it really easy to just pull that up. And not only, I think the reason sometimes people only do it at the end of the season is because it's a lot of work to do. But if you can say do like a monthly review, right? that might allow you to make those changes a lot quicker.
Well, in Xero, I have a widget dashboard set up on Xero. So when I go into Xero, it tells me for the current financial year how much I've spent on fuel for my vehicle and how much I've spent on fuel for my lawnmowers.
Interesting.
And so that's a widget that I've added specifically. It's easy for me as a slightly technically minded person to go, all right, that's useful to me. And there's a couple of other accounts that I monitor on Xero on a regular basis. So every time I log in, it comes up and tells me these details, and I can go, all right, I've spent, $3,000 in fuel this year for the lawnmower. Okay, well, how does that compare with last year? I can click on that, open it up, and compare it with last year. So features like that would be handy for people. I know a lot of your users will probably, like if it's a dashboard, they'll go, oh, yeah, that's interesting. But if they've got to click on it and then analyze data through the historical years, they might be less inclined to do so. But there's, in our industry, there's a varying degree between people who are purely focused on the technical aspects of cutting a straight edge on the grass and how do I make sure my business is technically where it needs to be.
Yeah. And
we have basic reports.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
No, I was just going to say, honestly, I think that's part of the reason probably why we haven't done it yet, because and there's some features that everybody needs, right?
Yeah.
And there's some, like the reporting, that only a few need, like the ones who try and, for example, to actually grow the business past being a sole trader, for example, right?
Yeah.
Or that some people are just really interested to get the absolute maximum out of their time investment into the business, right?
Yeah.
And we just don't get as many requests for those kind of features as we do for basic scheduling features, for example.
Yeah.
But I completely agree with you. Like, I would really like to add that. And I think the challenge is some people might not even know that how much they can optimize their business. But if we can find a way to easily surface that data and present it to them in a way so it's easy for them to identify the bottlenecks, I think there's an opportunity there for those guys to optimize their business as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of that data SortScape is already capturing. Some of it they need to go back to their accounting package to capture. So the difference between when I invoice and when I get paid, that goes to Xero or QuickBooks. But when it comes to how much do I make on this customer versus how much time I spend there, that's a really easy piece of data for you to provide the analysis and go, okay, on average, your Tuesdays are at this level of efficiency and your Wednesdays are looking terrible.
Yeah, we do provide reports around how many visits you completed last week per day, how much time you spent per client, like some of those more basic reports. And I think what Chris is getting at is that we maybe want to be a little more proactive in suggesting ways to improve, like almost analyze the reports for the customer and say, hey, by the way, if you do this, or did you notice this customer is less profitable than this customer? Not to put words in Chris's mouth, but I think that's sort of what you're getting at.
And I think some of that comes around by putting some of those reports in front of customers, and then they'll go, that's not useful, or they'll complain to you and go, well, that's stupid. Why would you do that? and other customers will go, that's awesome. Why'd you take it away?
Right.
But yeah, if you've got that information presented in a widget, so when they open SortScape up, and I guess if I understand correctly, the difference between the app on the phone where you hit the stop-start timer and send invoice compared to what you can access on a computer might be different too. So if they're only using their phone, you probably don't provide a lot of reports compared to if they log in on their computer where they can see a larger screen and more detail around their scheduling and reporting.
That's right. Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see if you add a few widgets on their main screen on their computer, so when they log in at the end of the day, they go, hey, this, that's what my efficiency was like today compared to yesterday or compared to last time I did that same route.
Yeah, 100%. It's actually funny. We were talking the other day too. It's really like years ago, you put this feature into SortScape where it tallies up like the amount that you're making throughout the day.
Yeah.
And it was really more meant as a rough guide, so you can kind of, when you put your jobs together, you can kind of make sure that you like hit a certain threshold.
Yeah.
But over time, like especially like the sole traders, they basically like track it, use it to track the income. Like they want accurate numbers there, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it could be we could work it in with that information as well.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
two things stand out to me there. One is that I hear from people occasionally saying, I need a CRM to do X or Y. Or one thing I heard from Jim's mowing franchises is that I think it's Jim's Jobs is software that they have built for Jim's franchises that allows them to look at a forecast and you're okay, based on how much work I've got scheduled for the day, this is how much income I'm likely to make. So they can look at that on a regular basis in their own CRM and go, oh, you know what? On average, I'm hitting, say, $2,000 a week, $3,000 a week. My forecast for this coming week is $1,500. I need to add more to my schedule. And listening to people from Jim's talk about that, they're like, that is the most useful feature. That is why we use Jim's Jobs.
There you go.
Interesting.
Because they can plan their scheduling and go, oh, you know what? It's looking like a really light week. I need to chase more work. I need to go and hit up those customers for any extra jobs they need doing while I'm there.
Yeah, I mean, we pretty much do the same thing, right? I mean, you can always skip forward a week and see what it looks like. We tally it all up. If you say go in the week view in SortScape,
Yeah.
at the bottom of the page, you can see how much you're going to be making, and it breaks it down by crew as well. So if you have multiple crews going out, you can see what the absolute total is, but then you can also see the crew total for each crew.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a feature which several Jim's franchises have said, hey, that forecasting just helps us to keep a check on our business and whether we're heading the right direction or not.
Maybe we should name it, Bill. Maybe we should call it the forecasting feature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess the counter side of this is you hear requests like that or recommendations like that come through. The other thing that counters that is user feedback. And I have heard from numerous people saying, oh, I don't use this CRM, don't use that CRM, this doesn't work well. Or, the feature we were talking about before where you've got 3 jobs lined up together and it can't actually log in and out automatically. So then you've got to revert to doing the manual recording the times. Those sorts of things people complain about. But interviewing Kyla and Renee, both of them struck me as really interesting because they come from a background of either Kyla has used CRMs for the previous industry where she was in the dental industry, and Renee has tried countless CRMs in her lawn care business, her and her husband Dan.
I think she's tried them all.
Yeah, and so they both have some really balanced feedback about SortScape in terms of going, well, I've compared it with others and this is why I like it and why I use it. So I found that was really insightful.
We didn't pay them to say that either.
And I guess this is why I've landed in this position of interviewing both of you, because when I reached out to Kyla and said, hey, are you interested in doing an interview? I didn't realize I was going to be taking a deep dive into SortScape. And then she recommended I talk to Renee because of Renee's experiences as well. And I was like, okay, this gives me opportunity to talk to more women in the industry, but it also gives me an opportunity to look at end users who have looked at multiple CRMs and have a really good understanding of how they work and what works well and what doesn't work well.
And I mean, not to beg any competition out there. It's like I know there's a lot of people who are very happy with other scheduling apps out there.
Yeah.
And I think it's due to what we said at the very beginning. Even though it's kind of a niche industry, there's so many different ways to run your business, to do your schedule, so many variations, and sometimes something else might just be a better fit.
Yeah, definitely. And certainly we're not out to say this is the only one you should buy or there's another one that's terrible or anything like that. But certainly the insight from both Kyla and Renee made me very interested in what SortScape does well and why it's doing well in Australia. I think, like we've said, the fact that it is specifically designed for lawn and garden maintenance businesses in Australia, that rings bells to me. It makes me go, okay, that's interesting. But then user feedback about it being good at doing that, being simple, and user feedback going back and making changes to the software on a regular basis has allowed them to keep on using it, because anything that doesn't work well, their feedback's being heard.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's almost community driven. You kind of get this critical mass of customers, and after a while, they tell you what direction to take SortScape, and it almost takes on a life of its own. Obviously, we don't just add every feature that's requested. We try to tease out the signal from the noise and kind of just, if 10 people ask for something in the same week, we think, there's probably something to this.
And we're usually fairly open with that as well. If someone asks us, like on the support chat, and say like, "Oh, could you add this feature?" then we usually try to give them an indication too, and say like, "Oh, yep, that's something that we've heard a fair bit, so there's a good chance that we're going to add that." Or we say, "Look, I understand where you're coming from, and I see how it's useful for you, but this is not something we've heard before. I'll put the feature request in our system so we can keep track of future demand for this, but it's not something we're going to be adding in the shorter midterm at the moment."
I guess you've got a balance between features that are worth adding, so things that you see will be valuable to a majority of users, not just one person, but also you're two people. You're not a team of 100.
Yeah, we do actually. We've got a little help since mid last year. We got another ex-colleague from Atlassian actually.
Yeah, okay.
Helping us, David. He's been great. So that's actually allowed us to accelerate our feature development a little bit.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
so,
and even if we had 100 people, there's certainly a cost to adding features in terms of complexity within the product.
For sure.
We're pretty strict about what we add, because we do protect the simplicity of SortScape. So, there's visual clutter that if a customer comes and they have 100 different options when they go to schedule a simple repeating visit, then that's a problem.
Yeah, and I can see that that's a really important aspect with SortScape, because that's one of the key things that people have said about it over the last 6-7 years, is that it's simple and easy to use. So you want to keep that. I guess the other side of that is going, okay, keep the functional operation for a daily basis really simple and easy to use, but then add some complexity in reporting where people want to take a deep dive into those reporting features, but it's not interfering with the simplicity of the user interface.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually it was funny. I remember when David started last year, he obviously had a look at SortScape. We showed him a little bit what it is, but I think it was like about 2 or 3 months in where he's like, "Man, like I had no idea like all the stuff that's under the hood." Like, so it looks very simple on the surface, but once you start digging in and using it, like there's actually a lot of functionality hidden in there.
Yeah, and I guess that's something where a new user will take time to discover that as well.
Yeah, and usually, well, it goes two ways about it, right? On the one hand, we want to keep it simple, so yeah, you're not going to find every feature straight away. But usually, what happens is that people then jump on the chat and say like, "Oh, can I do this somehow?" And then we're like, "Oh yeah, like it's over there." Or these days, it's all documented, so our AI bot can often just answer the question instantly.
Yep.
And then that's how they then discover the features that they need on top of what's already like apparent.
That's something I've discovered and I'd say it recently, but over the last 12 months, I've noticed that with the software I'm using to record our interview, is the AI bot for this software, Zencaster, is incredibly intuitive. It has a good understanding of the software and diagnosing problems. So when I have a problem, it's usually around the recording failing partway through or the audio synchronizing or something along those lines. The AI bot is really helpful in finding a solution there. And 99% of the time, it's able to give me a really quick, good solution. I see that with other things where AI bots are useless. But when it comes to software, an AI bot that's trained on the software is a great resource.
Yeah, and we improve it all the time. I mean, we monitor all the AI responses as well, and if you can see that it couldn't answer a question properly, then we update the documentation accordingly. So next time, it can give a better answer, and that's been amazing.
Yeah, that's certainly I heard somebody else talking about AI, and they were saying people are very critical of AI, but you got to remember that the AI revolution is only 18 months old.
Yeah, yeah, and it's good for support because it gives someone an immediate response, even if it's not the best response. It gives them a starting point, and then usually a human can come follow up a few minutes later or an hour and give the real response.
Yeah. And because it's only as useful as the database that it's drawing from, you can continuously update the database so that it can get the right response.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's continually learning in that sense.
And it also helps us internally with developing features as well. I mean, from a coding standpoint, AI has been hugely transformative.
It was actually interesting. We had a few situations where the AI kind of gave a bit of a confusing answer. And then as we looked into it more, we were like, you know what? It actually is confusing. Either the documentation that we wrote was confusing or the actual user interface was a little bit confusing, which then prompted us to go back and say, you know what? We don't need to teach the AI bot to answer this better. We just need to simplify this bit of the app and just make it easier to use.
Yeah. And I found myself doing that when I was messaging you earlier today to arrange this interview. I tend to short form everything. And then I read that and I was like, that doesn't make sense to somebody else. It makes sense to me what I'm trying to say, but I need to rewrite that so that it's going to sound like I'm actually having a conversation with you instead of just going ... But AI can certainly help with all of those things and either find solutions or make it obvious when something is a little bit confusing for the end user.
Yeah, and sometimes it gives responses that are, it might read this piece of documentation from here and this, and it kind of puts it together and makes a recommendation where it's almost, it's thinking, it's logical, where it's not like an answer that we specifically typed into our documentation.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's almost scary.
The AI
impressive.
overlords.
Well, yeah, I welcome them for now.
And until they start saying, hey, Bill, you're no longer needed in the company.
Yes. Turn me into a human battery.
Interesting. Hey, guys, we've covered some interesting ground here at the moment, talking about SortScape and talking about ways that we can make businesses more efficient. Are there any features or anything specifically about SortScape that I've missed at the moment that is significant?
There's a lot. I mean, like our focus, like in the last few months, I think, has really been in trying to close that loop where, we've always had the scheduling, we had the messaging, integration with accounting, but, that whole flow from like start to end, acquiring a customer, quoting a job, getting the job, scheduling it in, invoicing. We kind of wanted to cover that whole cycle, which is why we've released the built-in invoicing and the quoting, and about to release like a requests or leads feature as well.
Yeah.
And all of that is fairly new. So I think even like some of the existing customers, they haven't all started using it yet. But we had some great feedback on the quotes. I think it's seen a really good uptake.
That's good to know.
Yeah, it's more about like Chris said, we started with scheduling, then we kind of got pulled into invoicing because it's a next logical step after you complete a job. But now we're kind of getting pulled up the stream into
quoting and lead gen.
Quoting and lead gen and nurturing and growing your customer base, etc. So I guess in that respect, it might become more of what I think of as a traditional CRM.
Yeah, for sure.
And actually, one thing that leads us into that direction too is we just started working on integrations with Zapier, for example. So which opens us up to do integrations with all kinds of software out there, especially say on the lead generation side. There's lots of marketing software that you can then integrate with.
Yeah, and I guess this is where some of the CRMs start to feel really clunky when you've got a lot of, am I using the right word, APIs?
APIs, yeah.
Yeah, if you've got a lot of APIs to interact with for your CRM to work well, then that can introduce a level of complexity for a end user trying to set it up that they get lost in that.
It's definitely not a beginner level feature. It's probably something more for a company that's got multiple systems that need to talk to each other.
Yeah. But certainly there's a huge advantage in having a lot of connectivity with different APIs.
Yeah. I think it basically helps at this because, again, we're trying to keep SortScape simple, right? So let's say quoting. Yes, we do have a good quoting feature and it will probably be good for a lot of people, but there is specific quoting apps out there who got all the best of bells and whistles. And if you need to use one of those, then you can still quote in there and then you hook it up via Zapier and say like, okay, quote approved, then push that job into SortScape.
Yeah, makes it easy. So yeah,
that's how you can like expand on what SortScape has to offer. You know, for the smaller businesses, we'll try to be an all-in-one solution because that's what a lot of them look for. But we still don't want you to be limited.
Yeah, and I think this is where the balancing act is important because a smaller business they'd like simple software that does it all for them, but is really easy to use. And it's a little bit of an oxymoron trying to go, okay, it's really simple, but it does everything.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
You can go down the rabbit hole of quoting and going, okay, if I turn up to a new customer, I look at the size of the yard, the amount of yard that is lawn, the amount of edges there are, the amount of obstacles there are, the amount of outside the fence area there is, the fact that the customer's got some red flags. I punch all of those details in and a good quoting system will come back and say, okay, that's worth $120 to mow.
Mm-hmm.
Right. This is the sort of mower I use. This is the sort of whippersnipper I use. All these things that have an impact on how you quote. The complexity is massive.
Yeah, and our quoting right now is basically creating the line items and terms and conditions of your doing business with you and being able to send that to a customer and then track the response from them and see, okay, have they accepted? If not, and then once they've accepted, kind of move it on to the next stage of scheduling the job. So that's really where we focused thus far. It's not necessarily into what you're describing, Gary, around how much whippersnipping, how much of a pain the customer might be, etc. We kind of leave that discretion up to the customer.
Yeah, but that's just one area where the complexity can get crazy.
Absolutely, and that's the artistry of running a lawn and garden business, right? That's probably where the professionals are separated from the amateurs.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, I think Luke's been working on his quoting app as well, right? Where he's trying to incorporate like a lot of that data, a lot of that complexity, right?
Yeah. Luke's been working on that for a while, and it's looking interesting. But yeah, that's the sort of thing where if a new person in lawn care is starting up, the more help they get from existing information in the industry, the easier it is for them to get it right the first time round. And I guess, yeah, sometimes you want to differentiate between somebody who has the wisdom of experience and somebody who doesn't have that. And other times you go, okay, well, let's help that young infant business to just nail it and get things right straight out of the park.
And that's where you come in with your podcasts and your coaching and mentoring.
Yeah. And apps like what Luke's been putting together.
Mm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But it's been interesting talking to you both. I have enjoyed getting a bit of insight into SortScape and your background.
Thank you, Gary. Likewise.
Thanks for having us, Gary.
Yeah.
No worries. It's awesome to see more Australian options around, and particularly when the user feedback is really strong. It's great to see that your users are very loyal supporters.
Yeah, no, look, we love it. We love working with our customers. They're all super nice, and it's good refresher from working in IT. 100%.
Absolutely. Yeah, our customers they're nice and they're pretty switched on. Like, I wouldn't say there's many people that are, a lot of people might think, oh, IT and lawn and garden businesses might not go well together. But I would say a lot of our customers are pretty computer savvy.
Yeah, and compared to 15 years ago when I started my business, and I thought I was the only IT savvy person in the industry, to now where you look at it and you compare and you go, okay, a large percentage of people in this industry, as you would expect, have a reasonable IT background or understanding, able to implement things like SortScape fairly easily.
Yeah. We've got the best customers.
100%.
That's what you want. Hey, thanks for your time, guys. Appreciate it.
No worries.
Thanks, Gary.
No worries. I'm just going to...
Thank you for listening to Aussie Lawn Stars. Please remember to rate and review the show on the Apple Podcasts app or the player you use. Exciting new shows are released every Monday. Make sure you follow or subscribe to hear the next episode.